their feet. In contrast, members of the Nicobarese tribes, whose ancestors settled there less than 600 years ago, didn't have a tradition of such stories, and they suffered heavy casualties. Clearly, early settlers in the lands bordering the Indian Ocean had arrived at a time when it was not uncommon for enormous ocean waves to appear after the earth shook. But when did human beings first come to live here? What connections did they have to each other, and what do they still have in common? To answer these questions, we have to go back in time to the beginnings of the Indian Ocean. How the Indian Ocean was made. Until about 100 years ago, people believed that the oceans and continents were fixed in place. In 1912, a geologist named Alfred Wagner came up with a theory in a book called The Origin of Continents and Oceans. Wagner argued that the 7 continents that exist today had all been part of one giant landmass, a supercontinent named Pangaea. This supercontinent had begun to break up into pieces, with the pieces then gradually drifting apart from each other and into the positions they occupy today. Wagner was not the first to come up with an idea like this. Since the 16th century, cartographers and geologists had been puzzled by the fact that the continents seemed shaped to fit together, like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Could they have once been joined together? We now know that Wagner was on the right track. Various land masses did come together to form a massive supercontinent about 270 million years ago. Take a look at the map of Pangaea, and you'll see that India, Australia, Madagascar, Antarctica, and Africa were all stuck to each other, and that the Indian Ocean didn't even exist yet. About 175 million years ago, Pangaea began to break apart. It first broke into 2 large pieces called Laurasia and Gondwana. The land masses that we know today as North America, Europe, and Asia were part of Laurasia, while Gondwana was made up of South America, Africa, Australia, India, and Antarctica. Eventually, Laurasia and Gondwana broke up into even smaller pieces. India and Madagascar probably broke away from Africa about 160 million years ago, and broke away from Antarctica and Australia about 130 million years ago. About 90 million years ago, India broke away from Madagascar and began drifting north. Between 85 and 45 million years ago, Australia and Antarctica separated, and the Australian plate moved north to fuse with the Indian plate, creating the Indo-Australian plate. As it drifted north, the Indo-Australian plate collided with something in its way, the Eurasian plate. The force of the collision pushed the land upwards, creating the Himalayas. The land that was pushed upwards to create the Himalayas was once under the gigantic Tethys Sea, which encircled Pangaea. In fact, the fossils of sea creatures that were discovered on the mountains provided proof of plate tectonics, which is the idea that the Earth's crust is made up of many pieces or plates that continue to move very, very slowly. The Indian plate has continued to push against the Eurasian plate ever since, which is why the Himalayas are growing taller by about 5 millimeters every year. Earthquakes are common in the area because of the force exerted by the plates pushing against each other. This is also true of other places in the world where the boundaries of plates push against each other. Geologists call this a fault line. In fact, the fault line between the Indo-Australian plate and the Sunda plate, the plate that most of Southeast Asia is on, is where the epicenter of the December 2004 earthquake was. The Indian Ocean thus came into being when water rushed in to occupy the space between landmasses.